The mountain man's breath caught in his throat when he pulled back the pile of beaver pelts in his cabin and found a pair of terrified green eyes staring back at him from beneath the furs. Virgil Garrett had been alone in these California mountains for 3 years, and in all that time, he had never expected to find a woman hiding in his trading post cabin, let alone one who looked half-starved and scared enough to bolt like a wounded deer. The late afternoon sun of September 1875 filtered through the cabin's single window, casting golden light across the room as he stood there, all 6 feet 4 inches of muscle and confusion, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse and trembling, "please don't send me back." Virgil's large hands remained frozen on the furs, his weathered face showing surprise beneath the dark beard that covered his jaw. His long brown hair, tied back with a leather cord, had come loose during his day of hunting, and he knew he must look fearsome to this slip of a woman. He could see now that she was young, maybe 20 or so, with tangled blonde hair and a face smudged with dirt. Her dress was torn in several places, and there were scratches on her exposed arms that looked several days old. "How long have you been here?" he asked, keeping his voice low and steady, the way he would when approaching a spooked horse. 3 days, she admitted, clutching a worn blanket around her shoulders. "I've been hiding here for 3 days. You kept leaving during the day, and I would come out to get water and a little food. I'm sorry for stealing. I'm so sorry." Virgil slowly lowered himself into a crouch, making himself less imposing despite his considerable size. His muscled shoulders stretched the fabric of his worn shirt as he settled onto his heels. "Who are you running from?" The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she pressed herself further back against the log wall. "Men from Redding, bad men. They killed my father and took our claim. They said they would take me too, sell me to some house in Sacramento. I ran. I've been running for 4 days." His jaw tightened, anger flashing through his gray eyes. Virgil knew the type of men she meant. The California gold rush might have been winding down, but there were still plenty of vultures picking over the remains, preying on lone prospectors and their families. "What's your name?" Willa Dawson." "Miss Dawson, I'm Virgil Garrett. You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you, and nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go." He said it with such conviction that some of the fear left her eyes. "But you need to come out of there. You need food and water and proper rest. Can you do that?" She hesitated, studying his face in the dimming light. Whatever she saw there must have reassured her, because she slowly began to crawl out from beneath the furs. When she stood, Virgil could see she was taller than he had first thought, though still a good foot shorter than himself. She swayed on her feet, and he reached out instinctively to steady her, his large hands gentle on her shoulders. "When did you last eat a full meal?" he asked. 5 days ago, maybe 6. I lost track of time." Virgil guided her to the rough-hewn table and pulled out one of the 2 chairs he had made himself. "Sit. I'll get you something." He moved efficiently around the cabin, building up the fire in the stone hearth and putting together a simple meal of salt pork, beans, and cornbread he had baked that morning. As he worked, he was acutely aware of her watching him, probably trying to decide if she had made the right choice in trusting him. He filled a tin cup with water from his barrel and set it before her. "Drink slowly," he advised. "Not too much at once, or you'll make yourself sick." Willa wrapped both hands around the cup and sipped carefully. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't know what else to do. I saw your cabin from the ridge 3 days ago and watched you leave. I thought maybe I could hide here until they stopped looking for me. They still looking?" "I don't know. I heard riders pass by yesterday heading further into the mountains." Virgil set a plate of food in front of her and took his own seat across the table. "You said they killed your father. You got any other family?" She shook her head, picking up the fork with trembling hands. "My mother died 2 years ago. It was just Papa and me working our claim down near Redding. We were doing well, finding enough gold to get by. Then Samuel Hicks and his men came. They wanted our claim. Papa refused to sell, so they just took it." Her voice broke on the last word. "Samuel Hicks," Virgil repeated, filing the name away. He knew of the man, had heard stories in town about his methods. "He's got a reputation for taking what he wants." "He wanted more than the claim," Willa said quietly, not meeting his eyes. "He said I would fetch a good price, that I was too pretty to waste on these mountains. Papa tried to fight them. They shot him. I ran while they were arguing about whether to chase me or secure the claim first. The claim won." Virgil watched her eat, his mind working through the situation. Samuel Hicks was not a man who gave up easily. If he had let Willa run, it was only because he figured she would die in the wilderness or he could track her down later. The fact that she had survived 4 days and found shelter spoke to her strength and resourcefulness. "You can stay here," he said when she had finished most of her food. "Long as you need." Her green eyes widened. "You would do that? Let a stranger stay in your home?" "You're not a stranger anymore. You're someone who needs help, and I've got the means to give it." He stood and moved to the far corner of the cabin where his bed frame stood covered in more furs. "You'll take the bed. I'll make a bedroll by the fire." "I couldn't possibly take your bed." "You'll do as you're told if you want to regain your strength," he said, but there was kindness in his gruff tone. "You've been through hell, Miss Dawson. Let someone help you." Tears spilled down her cheeks then, and she quickly wiped them away. "I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks needed. Now finish eating, and then you're going to sleep properly for the first time in days." That night, as Virgil lay on his bedroll near the fire, listening to Willa's soft breathing from across the cabin, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had come to these mountains to escape civilization and all its complications. He had built his life around solitude, trapping and hunting and trading his furs in town twice a year. He did not need complications, but as he stared at the rough beams of his ceiling, he knew he could not have turned her away. Some things were more important than a man's desire for peace and quiet. The next morning, Virgil woke before dawn as he always did. He moved quietly, not wanting to disturb Willa's sleep, and stepped outside into the crisp mountain air. His cabin sat in a small clearing surrounded by pine and cedar, with a creek running nearby. It was a good location, remote and defensible, with clean water and plenty of game. He had chosen it carefully 3 years ago when he had decided to leave behind his old life. He was checking his traps when he heard movement behind him. Willa stood in the cabin doorway, wrapped in one of his blankets, her blonde hair catching the early morning light. She looked better after a night's sleep, though still far too thin and haunted. "You should be resting," he called out. "I've been resting for 3 days while hiding," she replied, walking toward him. "It feels good to stand in the sunlight without fear." Virgil nodded, understanding that feeling better than she knew. "There's cornmeal in the tin by the stove if you want to make breakfast. I'll be back shortly." When he returned an hour later with fresh trout from the creek, he found the cabin warm and filled with the smell of cornmeal mush and coffee. Willa had cleaned herself up as best she could and had braided her hair. The transformation was remarkable. Without the dirt and fear, she was quite beautiful, with delicate features and those striking green eyes that seemed to see right through him. "I hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing to the food. "I found the cornmeal and the coffee, and I thought I should make myself useful." "No objection here," Virgil said, setting the fish on the table. "A man gets tired of his own cooking after a while." They ate together as the sun climbed higher, and Virgil found himself telling her about his life in the mountains. He explained how he trapped beaver and marten, how he tanned hides and prepared furs for trading. He told her about the patterns of the seasons, the best places to find game, the way the weather changed in these elevations. He did not tell her what had driven him to this solitary life, and she did not ask. In turn, Willa spoke of her life with her father, of learning to pan for gold and work a claim. She talked about her mother's death from fever and how she and her father had grown closer in their shared grief. Her voice was soft but steady, and Virgil could hear the strength beneath her words. This was not a woman who would break easily. "What will you do?" he asked finally, the question that had been hanging between them. Willa's hand stilled on her coffee cup. "I don't know. I have nowhere to go, no family, no money. Everything we had was at the claim, and Hicks has that now. You could go to San Francisco, find work there." "As what? A woman alone with no references, no skills beyond panning for gold and cooking over a campfire?" She shook her head. "I know what kind of work I would find. It is the same work Hicks wanted to sell me into." Virgil's jaw tightened. She was right, and they both knew it. A young woman without means or family had limited options in 1875, and most of them were unpleasant. "Then you'll stay here until we figure something out." "You can't mean that. You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're brave enough to survive 4 days on your own in these mountains. I know you're smart enough to find shelter and resourceful enough to stay hidden for 3 days. I know you're not the type to give up easy." He met her eyes across the table. "That's enough for me." Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that went beyond words. Willa nodded slowly, and Virgil saw the tension leave her shoulders. For the first time since he had found her, she looked like she might actually believe she was safe. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Virgil went about his work of checking traps and hunting, while Willa gradually took over the running of the cabin. She cooked and cleaned, mended his clothes, and organized his supplies. She learned to prepare hides and stretch furs on frames. She was a quick study, watching how he worked and asking intelligent questions. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Virgil found himself sharing more than he had intended, telling her about his childhood in Missouri, about the war that had taken so many of his friends, about the restlessness that had driven him west. He did not tell her everything, not yet, but more than he had told anyone in years. Willa, in turn, opened up about her dreams and fears. She spoke of wanting to build something of her own, of not wanting to be dependent on anyone. She talked about her father's belief in her, his insistence that she was just as capable as any man. Virgil could see the truth of that and how quickly she adapted to mountain life. 2 weeks after he had found her, Virgil returned from checking his northern trapline to find Willa standing in the clearing with his rifle raised, pointed at a black bear that had wandered too close to the cabin. Her hands were steady, her stance correct. The bear, a young male, seemed more curious than threatening, but Virgil knew that could change in an instant. "Easy," he said softly, approaching from the side. "He's just investigating. Make some noise, he'll move on." Willa did not lower the rifle, but she did start yelling, her voice loud and commanding. The bear huffed, clearly deciding the humans were more trouble than they were worth, and ambled back into the forest. Only then did Willa lower the gun, her hands beginning to shake with delayed reaction. Virgil took the rifle from her gently. "You did good. Real good. Where did you learn to handle a gun?" "My father taught me. He said a woman in the wilderness needed to know how to protect herself." She looked up at him, and he saw fear and exhilaration mixed in her expression. "I've never actually pointed one at something living before." "You kept your head. That's what matters." He wanted to pull her into his arms to comfort her, but he held back. Lines existed between them, unspoken but real. She was a guest in his home, under his protection. He had no right to think of her as anything more, no matter how much he found himself wanting to. But that night, as they sat by the fire, Willa moved closer to him than usual, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet. "I feel safe here with you. I haven't felt safe since my mother died. Maybe not even then. But here, in this cabin, with you, I feel like nothing can touch me." Virgil looked down at her, at the firelight dancing in her green eyes, and felt something shift in his chest. "Nothing's going to touch you. I give you my word. Why are you so kind to me? You don't owe me anything." "Maybe I'm just selfish," he said, attempting to lighten the mood. "You're a far better cook than I am, and the cabin's never been cleaner." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Be serious, Virgil." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I know what it's like to have nowhere to go, to have everything taken from you and feel like the world's turned its back. Someone helped me once, when I needed it most. Maybe this is my chance to pass that along." "What happened to you?" she asked softly. Virgil took a deep breath. "I had a ranch in Missouri. Small place, but it was mine. Had a partner, man I'd served with in the war. We built it up together. Then one winter I was out checking the cattle during a storm. Came back to find the house burned, my partner dead. Found out later some men we'd crossed during the war had tracked us down, looking for revenge over something that hadn't even been our fault. They burned everything I had and left me with nothing but a horse and the clothes on my back." Willa's hand found his, her fingers threading through his. "I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago. I drifted west, worked various jobs, ended up trapping. Built this place with my own hands, made a life that nobody could take from me." He looked at their joined hands, at how small hers looked in his. "But I remember what it felt like to lose everything. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. You're a good man. Virgil Garrett. I'm just a man who knows how to survive, same as you." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and this time he did not pull away. They sat like that for a long while, watching the fire burn down to coals, neither wanting to break the moment. As autumn deepened into October, the mountains took on the brilliant colors of the season. The aspens turned gold, and the air grew crisp with the promise of winter. Virgil began preparing the cabin for the cold months ahead, stocking firewood and checking the chinking between the logs. Willa worked beside him, learning everything he could teach her about surviving a mountain winter. She was different now from the terrified woman he had found among his furs. She moved with confidence, her body growing stronger from good food and hard work. Her laughter came more easily, filling the cabin with a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Virgil found himself watching her when she was not looking, memorizing the way she moved, the sound of her voice, the sight of her hair shining in the sunlight. He was falling in love with her. He knew it with the certainty of sunrise, and it terrified him. He had not planned on caring for anyone again. His life was supposed to be simple, solitary, safe from the pain that came with losing people you loved. But Willa had changed everything just by existing in his space, by bringing life and light to his self-imposed exile. One evening in mid-October, as they were preparing dinner together in the cabin's small kitchen area, Willa turned to him suddenly. "Do you ever think about going back? To civilization, I mean?" Virgil paused in his chopping of vegetables. "Sometimes. Not often. Why do you ask?" "I was thinking about winter. We'll be snowed in here for months, just the two of us. It's not proper. People in town will talk if they find out." "Let them talk. We know the truth." "Do we?" She was looking at him with an intensity that made his heart race. "What is the truth, Virgil?" He set down the knife and turned to face her fully. "The truth is, you needed help, and I gave it. The truth is, you've become important to me, and I'm not ready to see you leave. The truth is, I haven't been this happy in years, and that scares me more than I care to admit." Willa stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the pine soap she had used to wash her hair. "I don't want to leave. I don't want to go back to Redding or on to San Francisco or anywhere else. I want to stay here with you." "Willa," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I know what I'm saying. I know what it means." Her hand came up to touch his bearded cheek. "I'm 22 years old, Virgil. I've worked a gold claim and watched my father die and survived on my own in the wilderness. I'm not some naive girl who doesn't understand her own mind. I care about you, more than care about you. I think I might be falling in love with you." Virgil's large hands came up to frame her face, his touch impossibly gentle for a man of his size and strength. "I'm 30 years old, and I've seen enough of life to know when something real is standing in front of me. You're the best thing that's happened to me in longer than I can remember. But I need you to be sure. Life up here is hard, especially in winter. It's lonely and isolated, and nothing like what you might have dreamed for yourself." "My dreams changed the day you found me," she said simply. "Now they all have you in them." He kissed her then, a gentle pressing of lips that held all the tenderness and longing he had been keeping locked away. Willa melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, and Virgil pulled her closer, mindful of his strength. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I want to do this right," Virgil said. "I want to marry you, make you my wife proper. But I can't take you to Redding for a preacher, not with Hicks and his men still around. Then we'll wait until spring when we can travel to another town, or we can speak the words ourselves. God hears vows no matter who speaks them." She smiled up at him. "I don't need a church to make me yours, Virgil. I already am." They stood by the fire that night, hands clasped, and spoke their promises to each other. Virgil vowed to protect her, to provide for her, to love her all the days of his life. Willa promised to stand beside him, to share his burdens, to be his partner in all things. The words were simple but heartfelt, and when they sealed their vows with another kiss, Virgil felt something settle in his chest that had been restless for years. That night, they shared the bed for the first time, and Virgil was careful and patient, showing Willa with his body what his words could not fully express. Afterward, she lay in his arms, her head on his broad chest, tracing idle patterns on his skin. "Tell me about your scars," she said quietly, her fingers finding the old bullet wound on his shoulder. "That one's from the war. Sharpshooter got me at Shiloh, was in the hospital for 2 months. He caught her hand and brought it to his lips. This life I've lived, it's left its marks. I like them. They're part of your story, part of what made you the man you are." She propped herself up to look at him in the firelight. "I want to know all of you, Virgil. Every scar, every story, every piece of your past." So he told her. He talked late into the night about battles and losses, about friends who had not made it home, about the ranch and the fire and the long journey west. He held nothing back, And Willa listened to it all, her hand never leaving his, her presence a comfort he had not known he needed. In turn, she shared more of her own story. She told him about her mother's final days, about holding her hand as the fever took her. She spoke of her father's grief and how they had poured themselves into working the claim, using the physical labor to numb the emotional pain. She described the day Hicks had come, the way her father had stood tall even knowing he was outmatched, the sound of the gunshot that had ended his life. "I should hate all men for what they did," she said. "But instead, I found you. How does that work?" "Maybe it's balance, the universe taking away and giving back." Virgil pulled her closer. "Or maybe we just got lucky." "I like the luck explanation better." As October turned to November, the first snows came to the high country. Virgil continued his work, now teaching Willa to run his trap lines with him. She proved to be a natural, moving quietly through the forest, reading signs in the snow. They worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's movements, communicating with looks and gestures as much as with words. The cabin became truly their home. Willa added small touches that made it more comfortable, more lived in. She made curtains from spare cloth Virgil had traded for, arranged wildflowers when the weather permitted, reorganized the storage to be more efficient. Virgil built her a better table and crafted a rocking chair for the evenings by the fire. They were happy. Virgil had not expected to use that word again in his life, but there was no other way to describe it. He woke each morning to find Willa beside him and went to sleep each night with her in his arms. They talked and laughed and worked together. They made love with increasing confidence and joy. They built a life. But in late November, their peace was shattered. Virgil was outside splitting wood when he heard horses approaching. He set down the axe and moved quickly to the cabin. "Willa, inside, now!" She heard the urgency in his voice and did not question. She was through the door before the three riders emerged from the tree line. Virgil stepped into the clearing, his rifle in hand, his body positioned between the approaching men and his home. The lead rider was a thick-set man with a scarred face and cold eyes. "You Garrett?" "Depends on who's asking." "Name's Tom Blake. I work for Samuel Hicks. We're looking for a woman. Blonde hair, green eyes, about 20 years old. Her name's Willa Dawson. You seen her?" "No," Virgil said flatly. Blake leaned forward in his saddle. "See? We heard different. Heard from a trapper passing through Redding that he saw smoke from this direction. Heard this was your cabin. Thought maybe you might have seen something. I haven't seen anyone but you three, and I'll thank you to move along." One of the other men, younger with a mean smile, spoke up. "We could just search the place." Virgil's rifle came up smoothly, pointing at the young man's chest. "You could try." Blake held up a hand. "Easy now. No need for trouble. But you should know, Mr. Hicks has offered a substantial reward for the return of Miss Dawson, $500. That's a lot of money for a mountain man." "I'm not interested in your blood money. And I'm done talking. You've got 10 seconds to turn those horses around before I start shooting." The three men exchanged glances. Blake's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake protecting her. Hicks doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive." 1. She's his property, legal and binding. 2. Virgil's finger moved to the trigger. Blake cursed but yanked his horse's head around. "You haven't heard the last of this, Garrett. Winter won't last forever, and when spring comes, we'll be back." They rode off, and Virgil waited until they were out of sight before lowering the rifle. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. He turned to find Willa standing in the doorway, her face pale. "They found me," she whispered. "They found rumors. They don't know for certain you're here." He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "But they'll be watching come spring. We need to be smart about this." "Maybe I should leave. Go somewhere else. I've put you in danger." "The hell you will." Virgil's arms tightened around her. "You're my wife now. I don't care if it was just words spoken between us. You're mine and I'm yours, and I'll be damned if I let Hicks or any of his men take you." "But Virgil, no. We face this together. That's what marriage means." He pulled back to look at her. "Come spring, we'll go to Sacramento or maybe San Francisco. We'll get properly married there, legal and recorded. Then we'll go to the law, tell them what Hicks did. A married woman has rights. You'll be under my protection, legal and recognized." "You think that will stop him?" "I think it will make it harder for him, and if the law won't help, then we'll figure something else out. But I'm not giving you up. Willa, not now, not ever." She buried her face in his chest, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. "I love you," she said, her voice muffled. "I love you so much." "I love you too. Now let's get inside. We've got planning to do." That night, they talked through their options. Virgil had some money saved from his fur trading, enough to make a start somewhere new if needed. They could go north into Oregon or even Washington Territory. They could change their names, disappear into one of the growing cities where no one would know them. But both of them were reluctant to abandon the life they had built in the mountains. "This is our home," Willa said, looking around the cabin. "I don't want to leave it. Then we'll fight to keep it, but we do it smart." Virgil spread out a rough map he had drawn of the area. "Come spring, before the pass opens fully, we'll head west to Sacramento. It's a bigger town, more law presence. We'll get married proper, and then we'll file a report about what Hicks did. Murder and attempted kidnapping, those are serious charges." "You think anyone will care about one dead prospector?" "They will if we make enough noise about it. And I've got some contacts from my Army days, men who owe me favors. One of them is a federal marshal now, working out of Sacramento. He's a good man. He'll listen." Hope flickered in Willa's eyes. "You really think this could work?" "I think we've got a fighting chance, but we need to be prepared for the worst. That means I'm teaching you to shoot better, and we're setting up signals in case trouble comes. You see riders approaching and I'm not here. You fire 3 shots from the rifle. I'll hear it and come running." "Virgil, I don't want you in danger because of me." He cupped her face in his large hands. "Listen to me. My life before you was just existing. You've given me a reason to live again, to care about tomorrow. Whatever comes, we face it together, understand?" She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Together. Winter closed in around them with a vengeance. The snows came heavy and frequent, piling deep around the cabin. Virgil and Willa settled into the enforced intimacy of being snowbound together, and rather than growing restless, they both found contentment in the closeness. They read aloud from the few books Virgil owned, played cards and chess, told each other stories about their pasts. Virgil taught Willa everything he knew about survival. She learned to shoot with increasing accuracy, to read the weather, to navigate by stars and landmarks. She could set a snare, skin a rabbit, and prepare a hide as well as any mountain man. More importantly, she learned to trust her instincts, to move confidently through the wilderness that had once terrified her. In return, Willa brought gentleness and warmth to Virgil's rough life. She sang while she worked, old songs her mother had taught her. She made the cabin beautiful in small ways, with careful attention to detail. She helped him see beauty he had stopped noticing, pointing out the way ice crystals formed on the windows, or how the sunset painted the snow gold and pink. Christmas came, and they celebrated simply but joyfully. Virgil had managed to acquire some sugar and dried fruit on his last trading trip before the snows, and Willa made a cake that tasted like heaven. He carved her a beautiful hair comb from antler, spending hours by the fire working the intricate pattern. She had sewn him a new shirt from fabric she had been hiding, working on it in secret whenever he was outside. "This is the best Christmas I've had in years," Virgil said as they sat by the fire that night, Willa curled against his side. "Even snowed in on a mountain with a wanted woman? Especially that." He kissed the top of her head. "Every day with you is a gift, Willa." "Sweet talker," she teased, but he could hear the emotion in her voice. I mean it. You've changed everything for me. I was just going through the motions before, waiting for my life to end. Now I've got plans, dreams. I want to build a bigger cabin, maybe add a barn. I want to expand my trap lines, maybe start trading more regularly. I want to build something with you, Willa, a real life, a future. I want that too. I want us to have a family someday, children running around this mountain. I want to grow old with you, Virgil Garrett. Then that's what we'll do. Come spring, we set things right with the law, and then we come back here and build that life. I promise you. The winter stretched on, and February brought the worst of the storms. They were confined to the cabin for days at a time, with snow piling so high against the walls that Virgil had to dig a tunnel to reach the woodshed. But even this enforced closeness only seemed to deepen their bond. They made love slowly and thoroughly, learning every inch of each other. They talked about everything and nothing. They simply existed together in perfect harmony. One night in early March, as the worst of the winter was finally breaking, Willa woke Virgil in the darkness. I need to tell you something. He came instantly awake, alert for danger. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think so. Even in the dim light from the banked fire, he could see her nervousness. Virgil, I think I'm pregnant. For a moment, he could not breathe. Then joy flooded through him, so intense it was almost painful. You're sure? As sure as I can be. I've missed my courses twice now, and I've been feeling sick in the mornings. My mother was the same way when she carried me, or so she told me. Virgil pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of glass. A baby. We're going to have a baby. Are you happy? She asked, her voice small. Happy? Willa, I'm terrified and thrilled and more grateful than I have words for. You've given me everything, a home, love, and now this. How could I be anything but happy? She relaxed against him, and he felt her smile against his chest. I was worried you might not want children. We never really talked about it. I want everything with you. Children, a future, growing old together, all of it. He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. We'll make this work, Willa. I'll keep you both safe. I swear it. I know you will. I've never doubted that. They lay awake for hours, talking about the baby, making plans, imagining their future. Virgil felt a fierce protectiveness rise in him, even stronger than what he already felt for Willa. He would protect his family, no matter what it took. Hicks and his men would not touch them. He would die before he let that happen. As March progressed and the snows began to melt, Virgil started preparing for their trip to Sacramento. He packed carefully, including the money he had saved and all the documentation he had about his identity and his claim to the land. He cleaned and oiled his weapons, packed ammunition, and made sure they had enough supplies for the journey. When do we leave? Willa asked, watching him work. As soon as the pass is clear enough. Another week, maybe 2. I want to move before Hicks sends more men up here. He glanced at her, at the barely perceptible swell of her belly. How are you feeling? Can you handle the trip? I'm stronger than I look, remember, and the morning sickness is getting better. I can ride. We'll take it slow and careful. No risks, not with a baby. The night before they were set to leave, Virgil did a final check of the cabin, making sure everything was secured. He hated leaving their home, even temporarily, but he knew it was necessary. They needed the protection of law and the legitimacy of a proper marriage. They needed to face Hicks and his accusations head-on. They were loading the horses in the early dawn when Virgil heard it, the sound of multiple horses approaching fast. His blood went cold. Willa, get inside, now. But it was too late. 6 riders burst into the clearing, surrounding them before they could react. Samuel Hicks was at the lead, a portly man with expensive clothes and cruel eyes. Behind him were Blake and 5 others, all armed. Well, well, Hicks said, his voice smooth as oil. Miss Dawson, we've been looking for you. Virgil moved to stand in front of Willa, his hand on his gun. You're trespassing. Leave now. I don't think so. See, Miss Dawson and I have some unfinished business. Her father owed me money, and she's going to work off that debt. That's a lie, Willa said, her voice shaking but strong. My father never owed you anything. You murdered him and stole our claim. Bold words from a thief. You ran off with something that belonged to me. Hicks's smile was reptilian. But I'm willing to be reasonable. You come back with me now, and I'll forget about your friend here harboring a fugitive. She's not going anywhere with you, Virgil said. She's my wife. She's under my protection. Hicks laughed. Your wife? Show me the papers, show me a marriage certificate signed by a preacher or a justice of the peace. You can't. Can you? Because you're just another mountain man who took advantage of a vulnerable woman. The law won't see it any other way. Virgil's mind raced. Hicks was right about the legal standing. Without proper documentation, he had no claim to Willa in the eyes of the law, and Hicks clearly had the upper hand in terms of numbers. 6 armed men against 1, with a pregnant woman to protect. The odds were impossible. I'll tell you what's going to happen, Hicks continued. You're going to step aside and Miss Dawson's going to mount up with my men. Then we're all going to ride out of here, and you're going to forget you ever saw her. Do that, and I'll let you live. Cause trouble, and my men will put you in the ground. It's a simple choice. No, Willa said, stepping up beside Virgil. I won't go. I'll die first. That can be arranged, Blake said, his hand on his gun. Virgil's mind was working furiously, looking for any advantage, any way out. They were outgunned and outmanned. Even if he drew, he would only get 1 or 2 of them before the others killed him. And then Willa would be alone, at their mercy. Unless... Wait, he said, holding up his hand. You want her to come willingly, right? Less trouble that way? Hicks's eyes narrowed. What are you proposing? Give me 5 minutes alone with her. Let me convince her this is the smart play. She comes willingly, no fuss, and you've got what you want without bloodshed. That works better for everyone. And what's to stop you from trying to escape? Where would we go? You've got us surrounded and you'll keep us in sight. But let me talk to her woman to man. Help her understand the situation. Virgil put every ounce of sincerity he could muster into his voice. I care about her. I don't want her hurt. If going with you is the only way to keep her alive, I'll convince her. Hicks studied him for a long moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. But I'm watching. And if I see anything I don't like, we'll end this the hard way. Virgil took Willa's hand and led her a few paces away, close enough that Hicks could see them, but far enough that their low conversation could not be heard. He pulled her close, as if embracing her, his mouth near her ear. Listen carefully, he whispered urgently. In my left saddlebag, there's a loaded pistol. When I give you the signal, grab it and take cover behind the horse. Can you do that? Virgil, no, there are too many of them. It's our only chance. I've got a plan, but I need you to trust me. He pulled back enough to look in her eyes. Do you trust me? With my life. Then be ready. When I kiss you, that's the signal. Grab the gun and take cover. Don't look. Don't hesitate. Just move. He kissed her then, deep and hard, pouring everything he felt into it. Then he spun her toward the horses and moved himself, drawing and firing in one smooth motion. His first shot took Blake in the chest. His second hit another rider. Then all hell broke loose. Willa grabbed the pistol from the saddlebag and dove behind Virgil's big sorrel gelding. Bullets flew, and she heard Virgil grunt as one caught him in the left arm. But he kept moving, kept firing with impossible accuracy. 2 more men went down. The horses were screaming and rearing, adding to the chaos. Hicks was yelling orders, trying to get his remaining men organized. Willa leaned around the horse and fired, her bullet catching one of the riders in the shoulder. He fell from his saddle with a scream. That left Hicks and 1 other man. The man charged at Virgil, and they went down in a tangle of fists and fury. Virgil's wounded arm hampered him, but his raw strength and muscle made up for it. He landed a crushing blow to the man's jaw, then another to his ribs. The man went limp. Hicks was trying to ride away, spurring his horse toward the tree line. Willa stood and aimed carefully, the way Virgil had taught her. She squeezed the trigger and Hicks jerked in the saddle. His horse kept running, but Hicks slumped forward, then fell, hitting the ground hard. Suddenly, it was over. The clearing was full of smoke and the smell of gunpowder. 4 men were dead, 1 was unconscious, and Hicks was on the ground, clutching his leg where Willa's bullet had found him. Virgil grabbed the man's guns, then moved to Hicks, pressing his boot down on the injured leg. Hicks screamed, "You're going to tell me the truth, all of it, everything you did to Willa's father, every claim you've stolen, every person you've hurt, and you're going to testify to it properly when we get to Sacramento." "Go to hell," Hicks spat. Virgil pressed harder, and Hicks screamed again. "I can do this all day, or you can cooperate, get medical attention, maybe avoid a hanging. Your choice. You can't prove anything." "We'll see about that." Virgil looked at Willa. "Get me some rope from the barn. We're taking him to Sacramento to face justice." 2 days later, they rode into Sacramento with Hicks tied to a horse, his leg bandaged but his fate sealed. The federal marshal, a grizzled veteran named John Hayes who had served with Virgil during the war, listened to their story with growing anger. "Samuel Hicks," he said when they finished. "We've been hearing complaints about him for months, but never had enough evidence to move. Looks like you've given us exactly what we need." "What happens now?" Willa asked. "Now we arrest him formally, and you 2 give official statements. We'll need you to testify when this goes to trial, but that won't be for a few months." Hayes looked at Virgil's bandaged arm. "You should see a doctor about that wound." "I'll be fine. But Marshal, we need something else from you first." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Oh? We need you to marry us, legal and binding, with all the proper documentation. I want there to be no question that Willa is my wife, under the full protection of the law." Hayes grinned. "I think I can arrange that. Got a preacher friend who owes me a favor. Give me an hour." True to his word, Hayes returned with a circuit preacher, and that afternoon, in the marshal's office, Virgil and Willa were married properly. Virgil wore clean clothes borrowed from Hayes, and Willa had purchased a simple but beautiful dress in a shop nearby. The ceremony was short but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Virgil kissed Willa with such tenderness that even Hayes looked away, smiling. "There," Hayes said when the paperwork was signed and witnessed, "Willa Garrett, formerly Dawson, legal and recognized throughout California and the territories. Anyone tries to take you now, they'll answer to federal law." "Thank you, John," Virgil said, shaking his friend's hand. "I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. You saved my life at Shiloh, remember? I'd say we're about even now." They stayed in Sacramento for 2 weeks while Virgil's arm healed and the initial legal proceedings against Hicks moved forward. Willa gave her testimony about her father's murder and Hicks's attempt to kidnap her. Other victims came forward, emboldened by her courage, and soon the case against Hicks was ironclad. He would hang for murder, and his associates would face long prison sentences. "It's over," Willa said as they prepared to return to the mountains. "It's really over." "It is. Now we can go home and build that life we talked about." The ride back to the cabin took 5 days, and when they finally rode into the clearing and saw their home still standing, Willa cried with relief. They had been gone for 3 weeks, and she had been terrified that something would have happened to it in their absence. But it was exactly as they had left it, waiting for them. That night, lying in their bed with Willa in his arms, Virgil felt a peace he had never known. They were safe, they were legal, they were together, and they had their whole lives ahead of them. "Tell me about your dreams," Willa said sleepily. "The ones you mentioned at Christmas." "I want to build a bigger cabin. Need more room with the baby coming. Maybe a couple of bedrooms, a proper kitchen. I want to add a barn, get some livestock. A few chickens, maybe a milk cow. I want to expand the trap lines, bring in more income so we can be comfortable. And I want to teach our child everything I know about surviving out here, about living free." "That sounds perfect, though I might add a few things to the list." "Such as?" "A garden, a big one, with vegetables and flowers, and maybe a bathing room eventually, with a real tub. And definitely more books. We need to make sure our children can read and write properly." "Children? Plural?" She laughed softly. "You don't want more than one. I want as many as you're willing to give me. Fill this mountain with little Garretts running around, learning to trap and hunt and grow vegetables. That's a beautiful dream. Virgil. It's our dream now. We'll build it together." The months that followed were some of the happiest of Virgil's life. He threw himself into expanding their home, felling trees and preparing lumber. The new cabin took shape slowly but surely, with 2 bedrooms, a larger main room with a proper kitchen area, and a covered porch that looked out over the clearing. He built sturdy furniture, including a cradle for the baby that he carved with intricate patterns during the long evenings. Willa worked beside him when her growing belly allowed, helping to chink the walls and prepare the garden plot. She sewed curtains and baby clothes, knitted blankets and tiny caps. She sang while she worked, and Virgil would often stop just to listen to her, marveling at how completely she had transformed his life. In June, they made the trip back to Sacramento for Hicks's trial. Willa testified again, her voice strong and clear as she described that terrible day when her father had been murdered. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before finding Hicks guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to hang, along with Blake and 2 others who had participated in the murder. "Justice," Willa said as they left the courthouse. "Finally, Papa has justice." "He would be proud of you," Virgil said, his arm around her shoulders. "So proud of the woman you've become." "I hope so. I like to think he's watching over us somehow, him and Mama both." They returned to the mountains just as summer was reaching its full glory. The wildflowers were in bloom, carpeting the meadows in brilliant colors. The creek ran high and clear from snowmelt, and the forest was alive with birdsong and the sounds of animals going about their business. Willa's pregnancy progressed smoothly. She remained active and healthy, helping with the daily work of their homestead. Virgil was constantly amazed by her strength and resilience. She had been through so much, lost so much, yet she faced each day with optimism and joy. In late August, as the afternoon heat shimmered over the clearing, Willa's labor began. Virgil had brought a midwife from a nearby settlement the week before, an older woman named Martha who had delivered hundreds of babies in her long life. She took charge with calm efficiency, directing Virgil to heat water and prepare clean cloths. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Virgil paced the porch, his hands clenched, feeling utterly helpless. Every cry from Willa tore at his heart. He had faced enemy soldiers, wild animals, and desperate outlaws without fear, but the sound of his wife in pain unmade him completely. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, he heard it, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. Martha appeared in the doorway, a smile on her weathered face. "You have a son, a big, healthy son, and your wife is tired but well. You can come in now." Virgil entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Willa lay in their bed, her hair damp with sweat but her face radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in one of her handmade blankets. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Virgil, come meet your son." He crossed to the bed and looked down at the baby. The infant had a shock of dark hair and was waving tiny fists in the air, his face red with indignation. Virgil reached out one large finger, and the baby immediately grasped it with surprising strength. "He's perfect," Virgil said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're perfect. I don't have words for what I'm feeling right now." "I know, I feel it too." Willa smiled up at him. "I was thinking we could name him William, after my father. William Hayes Garrett, with the middle name for the marshal who helped us." "That's perfect. William Hayes Garrett." Virgil carefully took the baby from Willa's arms, cradling his son against his broad chest. "Hello, William. I'm your father, and I promise you right now that I will always protect you. I will always love you, and I will teach you everything I know about being a good man." The baby stopped crying at the sound of his father's deep voice, his dark eyes trying to focus on Virgil's face. Willa watched them together, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "We made that," she said softly. "You and I, we made something beautiful and perfect. We did, and we're going to give him the best life we can, no matter what it takes." Martha stayed for a week, helping Willa recover and teaching them both about caring for a newborn. Virgil proved to be surprisingly adept at changing diapers and soothing the baby's cries. He would walk the floor with William in the middle of the night, singing old army songs in his rumbling bass, and the baby would settle contentedly in his father's strong arms. As summer faded into autumn, their little family settled into new rhythms. William grew rapidly, becoming more alert and responsive every day. He had his mother's green eyes and what promised to be his father's dark coloring. He was a happy baby, quick to smile and generally content as long as he was fed and dry. Virgil divided his time between his trapping work and helping with the baby. He built a crib that hung from the ceiling on ropes so Willa could rock William while she worked in the kitchen. He fashioned a carrier so he could take the baby with him on shorter trips, keeping his son close even while checking nearby traps. Willa recovered her strength quickly and threw herself into managing their expanding homestead. The garden had produced bountifully, and she spent long hours preserving food for the winter. She sewed and cooked and tended to William with tireless dedication. But she also made time for Virgil, for quiet moments together when the baby was sleeping, for conversations and laughter and the physical intimacy they both craved. "Are you happy?" Virgil asked one night as they sat on the porch, William asleep in his crib inside. The autumn stars were brilliant overhead, and a cool breeze carried the scent of pine and coming winter. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Willa said, leaning against his shoulder. "A year and a half ago, I was hiding in your furs, terrified and alone. Now I have you, I have William, I have this beautiful life. How could I be anything but happy?" I think about that sometimes, about how close I came to missing all this. If I had checked my furs a day earlier or a day later, if you had chosen a different direction to run, if any of 100 small things had been different, we might never have found each other. But we did find each other, that's what matters, and now we have forever. Virgil pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. Forever sounds just about right. Winter came again to the high country, but this time, Virgil and Willa faced it as a family. The new cabin was warm and spacious, easily accommodating the three of them. William grew and changed, learning to roll over, then to sit up, then to crawl with determined enthusiasm around the main room. Virgil would lie on his stomach on the floor, making faces at his son, and William would laugh with pure delight. "You're good with him," Willa observed one afternoon, watching her husband and son play together. "He makes it easy. He's such a good baby." Virgil scooped William up and tossed him gently in the air, catching him securely. The baby shrieked with joy. "I never knew I could love someone this much. Both of you, you're everything to me." As William approached his first birthday, They decided to host a celebration. Virgil rode down to the nearest settlement and invited a few of the families they had become friendly with. Martha, the midwife, came, along with a young couple who had homesteaded about 5 miles away, and an older trapper and his Shoshone wife, who Virgil traded with regularly. It was a simple party, but full of warmth and laughter. Willa had baked a cake, and they sang songs around the table. William, overwhelmed by all the attention, ended up falling asleep in his father's arms long before the guests left. But it was a perfect day, marking not just William's birth, but the life they had all built together. That night, after everyone had gone and the cabin was quiet, Virgil and Willa stood over their son's crib, watching him sleep. "Thank you," Virgil said softly. "For what?" "For hiding in my furs, for trusting me, for building this life with me, for William, for everything." He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "I was lost before you, Willa, just drifting through the days, waiting for them to end. You gave me purpose, love, a future. You gave me a reason to wake up every morning with gratitude instead of just going through the motions." "You saved me too," she replied, tears shining in her eyes. "In every way a person can be saved. You protected my body, healed my heart, and gave me a home and family. You're the best man I've ever known, Virgil Garrett." "Then I guess we're even," she smiled. "I guess we are." The years that followed were good ones. William grew into a sturdy, cheerful little boy with his father's strength and his mother's intelligence. He learned to walk and talk, to help with simple chores, to be gentle with the animals. Virgil taught him about the forest, about respecting nature, and understanding the rhythms of the seasons. Willa taught him his letters and numbers, reading to him every night before bed. When William was 3, Willa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder, and she spent more time resting. Virgil took over even more of the household duties, caring for William and managing the trap lines and trading. He never complained, approaching each task with the same steady determination he brought to everything. Their second child, a daughter they named Margaret Rose, arrived in the spring of 1880. She had her mother's blonde hair and her father's gray eyes, and from the moment she drew breath, she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. William was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her, to make her smile. "Our family is complete," Willa said one evening, nursing Margaret while William played at her feet and Virgil prepared dinner. "Is it?" Virgil asked with a smile. "You sure you don't want more?" "Let me survive raising these 2 first, then we'll talk." But she was smiling, and Virgil knew that whether they had more children or not, they had built something beautiful and lasting. Their home was filled with love and laughter, with the everyday chaos of family life. It was everything he had never dared to dream of during those lonely years alone. As the children grew, so did their homestead. Virgil had expanded his operations, trading furs not just in Redding, but in Sacramento and even San Francisco. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable and secure. The garden Willa had dreamed of flourished, providing fresh vegetables through the summer and preserved goods for winter. They had chickens and a milk cow, and Virgil had built a proper barn to shelter them. The cabin had grown too, with additions and improvements made each year. There was now a bathing room with a real copper tub that Virgil had hauled up from town, though filling it with hot water was still a labor-intensive process. They had more books, a better stove, glass windows that let in light without letting in cold. It was a real home, built by their labor and love. Word of their story had spread through the territories. Willa, the woman who had survived alone in the wilderness and helped bring down a notorious criminal. Virgil, the mountain man who had risked everything to protect her. They became something of a legend, though they tried to downplay it. To them, they were just people who had found each other and chosen to build a life together. On their 5th wedding anniversary, counting from that night they had spoken vows by the fire, Virgil took Willa riding up to a high meadow he had discovered. It was summer, and the wildflowers were in full bloom, creating a carpet of colors that stretched in every direction. They had left the children with Martha for the day, their first time alone together in months. "It's beautiful," Willa breathed, taking in the view. "Not as beautiful as you." Virgil dismounted and helped her down, then pulled a blanket from his saddlebag and spread it on the ground. They sat together, looking out over the mountains that had become their home. "Do you ever regret it?" Willa asked. "The life you left behind, the solitude you had?" "Not for a single second. That life was empty, Willa. This life, with you and the children, this is real. This matters. He took her hand, bringing it to his lips. I love you more now than I did 5 years ago, and I'll love you more 5 years from now. Every day with you is a gift. You've become quite the romantic mountain man. You bring it out in me. He lay back on the blanket, pulling her down beside him. They watched the clouds drift by, content in each other's presence, in the life they had built together. Virgil, Willa said after a while. I'm pregnant again. He sat up so fast he nearly knocked her over. You're sure? Very sure. About 3 months along, I think. A grin split his bearded face. Another baby. That's wonderful. Are you happy about it? I'm terrified and thrilled, just like the other times. But yes, I'm happy. Our family keeps growing, and somehow our love grows to fit each new person. It's like magic. The best kind of magic. He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. Boy or girl, doesn't matter. As long as you and the baby are healthy, that's all I care about. Their third child, another boy they named Thomas, arrived that winter. He was a loud, demanding baby, completely different from his easygoing siblings. But he filled their home with even more life and energy, and both William and Margaret adored their baby brother, even when he was being fussy. The years turned, each one bringing new joys and challenges. William grew tall and strong like his father, with the same protective instincts and steady nature. He learned to trap and hunt, to read the forest and respect its power. But he also had his mother's gentle heart and love of learning. He could recite poetry as easily as he could skin a rabbit, and he approached both with equal enthusiasm. Margaret was fierce and independent, insisting on learning everything her older brother learned. She could shoot as well as any boy her age, ride like she had been born on horseback, and argue with a lawyer's skill. But she also had a tender side, nursing injured animals back to health and reading to Thomas when he had nightmares. Thomas was the wild one, always getting into scrapes and coming home with torn clothes and skinned knees. But he had a laugh that could light up a room and a heart that loved fiercely. He adored his siblings and his parents with equal passion, and he filled their lives with chaos and joy in equal measure. In 1885, when William was 10, Margaret 7, and Thomas 5, a drought struck California. The winter snows were light, and the summer heat was brutal. Streams that normally ran year-round dried to trickles. Game became scarce, and the garden struggled despite Willa's best efforts. Virgil made the decision to move the family down to lower elevations for a while, renting a small house in Redding while he hunted further afield. It was hard on all of them, being away from their mountain home, but it was necessary. The children adapted to town life with varying degrees of success. William and Margaret both enrolled in the small school and threw themselves into learning. Thomas hated being cooped up in a classroom and spent most of his time getting into trouble. It was during this time that Willa reconnected with some of her father's old friends. She learned more about his life before she was born, about his dreams and struggles. She visited his grave for the first time, bringing flowers and telling him about his grandchildren, about the life she had built with Virgil. It brought her a sense of closure she had not realized she needed. The drought broke in the spring of 1886, and the Garrett family returned to their mountain home with relief. The cabin had weathered the winter well, and everything was as they had left it. They replanted the garden, restocked the larder, and settled back into their familiar routines. I missed this, Willa said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the children play in the clearing. Town life was interesting, but this is where we belong. Agreed, though the children learned a lot in school. We can continue their education here. I've been thinking about ordering more books, maybe hiring a tutor to come up in the summers. Whatever you think is best, you're the smart one in this family. Willa laughed and swatted his arm. You're plenty smart, Virgil Garrett. Don't sell yourself short. As the children moved into their teenage years, new challenges arose. William, now 16, was being courted by several families with eligible daughters. He was a handsome young man, tall and broad-shouldered like his father, with the same steady, protective nature. But he showed no interest in any of the girls, telling his parents he was not ready to think about marriage yet. Margaret, at 13, was becoming a beauty, with her mother's features and her own fierce independence. She had no interest in domestic arts beyond what was necessary for survival, and spent most of her time practicing with weapons or riding her horse through the mountains. Willa worried sometimes that she was too wild, but Virgil insisted she was perfect just as she was. Thomas, at 11, was finally starting to settle down a bit, channeling his energy into helping his father with the trap lines and learning the family trade. He had a natural talent for it, able to move through the forest like smoke and read animal signs better than anyone Virgil had ever seen. In the spring of 1891, Virgil took William on an extended trapping expedition, leaving Margaret and Thomas to help their mother run the homestead. They were gone for 6 weeks, traveling deep into the high country, and it was during this trip that Virgil had a long conversation with his eldest son about life, love, and the future. "You're a man now," Virgil said one night as they sat by their campfire. "Old enough to make your own choices about your life. Your mother and I want you to know that whatever you decide, we'll support you. If you want to stay on the mountain and continue trapping, that's fine. If you want to go to a city and find other work, that's fine too. Your life is your own, William." "I want to stay here," William said without hesitation. "This mountain, this life, it's in my blood. I can't imagine being anywhere else. But I don't think I want to trap my whole life. I've been thinking about starting a breeding program for horses. The horses that can handle this terrain, they're valuable. I think there's a business in it." Virgil nodded thoughtfully. "That's a good idea. Smart. We could set aside some land, build proper corrals. I've saved enough over the years to help you get started." "I can't take your money, Pa." "It's not just my money. It's family money. And families help each other. Besides, I'm proud of you for thinking ahead, for planning your future. Your mother will be thrilled that you're staying close to home." They returned from the trip to find the homestead, running smoothly under Willa's capable management. Margaret had shot a young buck that had been raiding the garden, and Thomas had successfully trapped his first beaver on his own. The family celebrated with a feast, and Virgil looked around the table at his wife and children, feeling a contentment that went soul deep. As Virgil entered his late 50s, he began to slow down a bit, though he would never admit it. Willa, in her mid-40s, remained as energetic and capable as ever, managing their household and helping William with his horse breeding business. Margaret, now 20, had surprised everyone by falling in love with a young doctor who had come to Reading to set up practice. He was a good man who respected her independence and was not intimidated by her fierce nature. They were married in the summer of 1898 in a ceremony held in the high meadow where Virgil had taken Willa on their 5th anniversary. Thomas, at 18, had become the finest trapper in the region, with a reputation that rivaled his father's. But he showed no interest in settling down, preferring to spend months at a time in the wilderness, returning only to sell his furs and spend time with family. In the fall of 1899, as the new century approached, Virgil and Willa celebrated their 24th anniversary. They were alone in the cabin, the children all grown and living their own lives, though all remained close by. It was strange to have the house quiet again after so many years of noise and chaos, but also peaceful. "We did it," Willa said, curled up against Virgil's side in their bed. "We raised 3 good people and built a life that lasted." "We did. Though I'll admit, I miss the chaos sometimes. Give it time. Margaret's expecting, you know. She told me last week. We're going to be grandparents." Virgil's face lit up. "A grandchild? That's wonderful. Does her husband know?" "Of course he knows. She told him first, as she should have." Willa laughed at his eagerness. "You're going to be an insufferable grandfather, aren't you?" "Absolutely. I've earned the right." He pulled her closer. "Can you believe it's been 24 years since I found you hiding in my furs? Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Other times it feels like we've always been together, like there was never a time before us." "I know what you mean. You're as much a part of me now as my own heart. More, maybe. I couldn't survive without you, Willa." "Good thing you won't have to. I plan on being around for a long time, Virgil Garrett. You're stuck with me." "Best thing I've ever been stuck with." The new century arrived with hope and promise. Margaret gave birth to a healthy baby girl in March of 1900, naming her Willa Rose after her mother and grandmother. Virgil held his granddaughter with tears in his eyes, marveling at how the circle of life continued, how love multiplied and grew. William married a few months later to a sensible young woman who shared his love of horses and mountain life. They built a house on a piece of land adjacent to the main homestead, and William's horse breeding business continued to flourish. Thomas, surprisingly, met a woman during one of his rare trips to Sacramento and was married within 3 months. He brought her to meet the family. and though she was clearly overwhelmed by mountain life, she was tough and determined to make it work. As Virgil approached 60, he finally began to accept that he was slowing down. His left arm, injured in the fight with Hicks's men so many years ago, ached in cold weather. His knees protested the long hikes he had once taken without thought, but he was content, surrounded by family, secure in the life he had built. One evening in the summer of 1902, as Virgil and Willa sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to her with a serious expression. "I want you to know something." "That sounds ominous." "It's not, I promise. I just want you to know that finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. These 27 years with you have been the happiest of my life. You gave me everything, Willa. Love, family, purpose, joy. You took a broken man and made him whole again." Willa's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you saying this now?" "Because I want to make sure you know. Because I never want you to doubt how much you mean to me, how grateful I am for every single day we've had together." He took her hand, his large, weathered fingers gentle around hers. "You were hiding among my furs, scared and alone. And for 3 days, you stayed hidden while I went about my business, not knowing my whole life was about to change. Then I found you, and everything became clear. You were what I had been missing, what I had been waiting for without knowing it." "I love you," Willa said, her voice thick with emotion, "more than words can say. You saved me in every way possible, and then you gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. We saved each other. That's how it works with real love." He pulled her close, and they sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting. The years continued to pass, bringing grandchildren and great-grandchildren, new challenges and quiet joys. Virgil's hair turned completely gray, and his body bore the marks of a life lived hard and well. Willa aged gracefully, her blonde hair streaked with silver, her face lined but still beautiful. They grew old together, exactly as they had promised all those years ago. In 1910, as Virgil celebrated his 70th birthday, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, he looked around at the gathering and felt a peace so profound it brought tears to his eyes. This was legacy. This was love made manifest. This was what life was supposed to be about. That night, alone with Willa in the cabin that had been their home for so many years, he held her close and whispered, "Thank you for hiding in my furs. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for choosing me." "Always," she whispered back, "in this life and whatever comes next, I choose you. Always." The mountain stood eternal above them, witness to their love story. From the terrified woman hiding among furs to the matriarch of a thriving family, Willa had traveled far. From the solitary mountain man to the beloved father and grandfather, Virgil had found his purpose. Together, they had built not just a home, but a dynasty of love that would continue long after they were gone. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the pines and the stars shone bright over the California mountains, you could almost hear their laughter echoing through the clearing, the sound of two souls who had found each other against all odds and held on tight, building a love that would last forever. Their story became legend in the mountains, passed down through generations. The cabin still stood, maintained by their descendants, a testament to what two people could build when they found each other at exactly the right moment. The mountain man and the woman who hid among his furs, who trusted a stranger and found a husband, who faced danger together and emerged victorious, who built a family and a legacy that would endure. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the danger they had faced or the hardships they had overcome, but the love they had built and the life they had shared. From 3 days of hiding to a lifetime of loving, their story proved that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them, and that real love, once found, can weather any storm. Virgil kept her safe for good, just as the story promised. He protected her body, healed her heart, and gave her a home and family. And Willa did the same for him, saving him from a life of lonely isolation and giving him reason to believe in hope and love again. They were each other's salvation, each other's home, each other's forever. The end of their story was not marked by tragedy or loss, but by fulfillment and joy. They lived long lives surrounded by love, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. And when the time came for them to leave this world, they did so together, hand in hand, their love story complete, but their legacy living on in every descendant who bore their names and carried their values. The mountain remained, eternal and unchanging, watching over the land they had claimed as their own. And somewhere, in the wind that whispered through the pines, you could still hear their story. The tale of the mountain man who found a woman hiding among his furs and chose to keep her safe, not just for 3 days, but for good, forever and always. Their love had transformed both their lives, proving that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust a stranger, open your heart, and believe in the possibility of happiness even when everything seems lost. And they lived happily ever after, exactly as all the best love stories should end.